Today, we are diving into a really fascinating thought experiment. I mean, what would happen if you could build a perfect society from the ground up, give it everything it needs to succeed? What could possibly go wrong? Well, as it turns out, quite a lot. Seriously, just think about that for a second. What's rule number one? Would you go for total freedom, or maybe absolute equality, or safety above all else? Well, in the story we're looking at, a character named Evan gets to play creator in his dreams, and he runs this exact experiment. He calls it SimSociety, and what he finds is a fundamental crack in the very idea of a perfect world. You see, Evan wanted to find out what people would really do if they had absolutely everything they needed. So he sets the stage for his new society with this perfect foundation, a true blank canvas, with zero history of conflict or scarcity. Okay, so what's really interesting here is just how simple and, idealistic these starting conditions are. First, Evan gives his people complete, unrestricted free will. Second, he puts them in a valley with more than enough food and resources for everyone. And third, he carves out these massive, cool, dry caves for them to live in, a safe, communal shelter. It's a literal paradise. But almost immediately, this perfect setup starts to fracture. And it's not some big disaster or an invasion that causes it. No, all it takes is the introduction of a single, very human desire, the desire for something to call mine. So this slide just lays it out so perfectly, right? You see the shift right away. People start drifting out of those safe shared caves. And why? Because they want privacy. They start claiming individual trees for themselves. And just like that, the entire valley transforms from this cooperative community into a competitive one. Resources are no longer for everyone, they're for an owner. And that right there is the declaration that changes everything. This idea of mine just takes root and spreads. It gets so extreme that fruit literally falls from the trees and rots on the ground. People are hungry, but they can't touch it. Why? Because it belongs to someone else. So once you have private property, what comes next? Well, you need a way to protect it, right? And just like that, this simple paradise collapses into this complex system of rules and leaders and even currency, all designed to manage ownership. And this timeline shows just how fast it all snowballs. A chief emerges, offering protection, for a price, of course. Those shiny little decorative nuggets that were just scattered on the ground, well, they're not decorations anymore, they're money. Then the chief makes it all official, drawing up maps, registering land, charging fees. And suddenly, an act that was totally normal yesterday, just picking up some fallen fruit, is now a crime. And this is the cry from the guy who gets caught. You can almost hear the confusion in his voice, right? He's still operating on the world's original premise that the resources were for everyone. He's appealing to the creator's original intent. But he's not living in that world anymore. The rules have completely changed. And this is the chief's chilling response. There's no appeal to morality, no discussion of fairness. It's just cold, hard pragmatism. He basically institutionalizes a system where people with no land are forced to work for the landowners, and they only get a tiny fraction of the value they create. Fairness? Yeah, that was never part of the deal. So this is the big, troubling conclusion Evan comes to. He gave them a paradise, but that combination of free will, the desire for private property, and, this is the key, the fear that comes with owning something, it was the perfect recipe for injustice. Because think about it, once you have something that is yours, you're instantly afraid of losing it. And that fear drives the need for protection, for rules, for power structures. The system didn't just fail. It was pretty much destined to create inequality from the very first time someone said, "This is mine." Okay, so the SimSociety experiment shows how easily external systems of rules can get corrupted. And if building a perfect society from the outside in is basically doomed to fail, well, that forces us to ask a totally different and maybe deeper question. What about the rules we have on the inside? And this is where the whole thought experiment kind of flips on its head. I mean, if Evan's society, which had every possible advantage, still collapsed into greed and injustice, that suggests the answer isn't in some perfectly designed system. The source material argues we have to look at something more fundamental to our nature, where our sense of morality and love and loyalty actually comes from. So, according to Evan's logic, the more dependent a creature is on its parents, the more capacity it has to learn these complex things like love and loyalty. Bugs and reptiles, they're on their own from the start. Birds, they get some training. But humans, we require years of intense bonding and teaching. And this is the powerful analogy the story uses. That long period of dependency, it isn't a weakness, it's by design. Just like Evans started with a blank canvas for his entire society, parents are given their own tiny blankish canvas, a child. Their job is to act like mini-gods, creating that initial environment where a child can develop an internal moral compass. Which brings us to the final, really provocative idea here, conscience. The story defines it as this clear inner sense of right and wrong that we're actually born with. It's not something we build from scratch, it's already there. But, just like we saw in SimSociety, as these other desires for things like property or power get louder and louder, we can learn to ignore that inner voice. And maybe that's the real experiment we're all living in. Not how to build a perfect society outside of us, but whether we choose to listen to the one that's already inside.